Okay, hold on for a second. This anti-cremation argument is just awful. Okay, the argument is that cremation is too grotesque for Christians to be involved in, and this argument is gruesome. This is their most disturbing argument, I believe. It's basically says that cremation is too terrible a practice for Christians to be associated with. And basically what's going to happen is you'll have someone get up in front of an audience and he's going to describe, or she, cremation from another country, probably a third world country somewhere. And he's going to talk about a pagan cremation ritual where the body is heaped onto a big fire, big bonfire. And then he goes into great detail about what the smells are like, about what the sounds are like for creation, about what it looks like to see the flesh sizzling and popping, about what it's like when you're present and you're witnessing the charring of human skin and everything that goes with that. They'll go into great detail about how some of the parts aren't even completely burned up. And they'll use words like cooked, barbecued, roasted, sizzled. They'll say things like a loving daughter will have to pick up the arm of her mother, and this 8-year-old little girl will have to toss that arm back into the fire to ensure that it's totally burned with the rest of her mother's body. It's horrible how they just go blow by blow of what happens or happened in a pagan culture when they burn this dead body. And then they'll say, don't you see how awful cremation is? Why would you want your loved one to go through something like that? And that's their argument. Well, the fact of the matter is this. That is not cremation in the countries like the United States of America, Canada, Great Britain. It just isn't. That's not what cremation is like. But they're building on your emotions, and they try to talk you out of it. They try to convince you that that's what cremation is like. And their argument is desperation. It's sad. They will try to guilt you into making a decision to not cremate. The fact of the matter is this: you're not going to see that body be cremated. You're not going to hear what happens. You're not going to smell it. You're not going to touch it. You're not going to have anything to do with that body when it's cremated. You're not going to be involved in any way. And people cremated today don't get tossed on a bonfire where everybody has to hold hands and pray that the corpse gets completely consumed. Modern cremation is not like that. And if we wanted to, we could get very grotesque and share what happens when someone is prepared for burial and all of the steps that happen to try to get a body ready for burial. We could go into a lot of detail about blood and chemicals, but we aren't going to. Why? Because lots of things are just gross. But just because it's gross doesn't mean it's a sin. So the next argument that they use is interesting. It's that resurrected people have physical bodies. They'll say that resurrected people from the Bible had physical bodies. And that's weird. Since people are going to be resurrected when Jesus comes, we need to have a body that's ready to be resurrected. And they'll say that the body must all be in one place to be resurrected. That's their argument. They'll bring up scriptures like this from John 11, where Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. Starting in verse 38, Jesus is deeply moved. He comes to the tomb. He says, remove the stone. He's warned, hey, the body's going to have a stench. And Jesus says, did I not say to you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So verse 41, they removed the stone. Jesus raised his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you've heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but because of the people standing around, I said it so that they may believe that you sent me. And when he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And the man who had died came forth, bound hand and foot. And so there's a physical body when Lazarus is raised from the dead. They'll use Matthew 27, verses 52 and 53. The tombs, this is when Jesus is crucified on the cross. He dies. And then the tombs were opened. Many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. Coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they entered the holy city and appeared to many. So the point here is that actual bodies came up out of the grave. So if you want to be resurrected, you need to have an actual body in the grave. It's an extremely poor argument, though. The reason it's such a bad argument is because it's a gross misunderstanding of the resurrection that we're looking forward to when Jesus returns. Right? People just, this is concordance theology. They're going to concordance, looking up words and trying to make it stick, but this one doesn't. Those resurrections that we just read about were used as evidence that Jesus is the Christ. They were miracles to show who Jesus is. They were not the resurrection that we're talking about when we're resurrected at the end of time. And because that will be a different kind of resurrection, because our resurrection at the end of time is not just a sign, that's just a poor argument. Our resurrection at the end of time is not a sign. That's our resurrection. That's our resurrected body. If we're a Christian, it's a promise. We're going to actually live in that resurrected form. These people who were resurrected when Jesus was crucified are not still walking around today. They probably died again, right? They're buried, or God did something else with their bodies. Lazarus died again, right? He's not alive today. And if those people died and were buried again, they can look forward to the same resurrection that we look forward to, the resurrection where our bodies are immortal. Our future resurrection is not the physical bodies that we have right now. And so that argument which says that you need a physical body, that's just a poor understanding of the resurrection that we can look forward to when Jesus returns. Our resurrection when Jesus returns is a different kind of resurrection. Okay, this next argument is that the early church father Tertullian said that only the heathen burn their dead. This anti-cremation, those critics, those proponents against cremation, invoke the authority of early church fathers or early church leaders to confirm that cremation is wrong. That's their affirmation. There are a few problems with this approach, though. So first off, let's look exactly at what Tertullian wrote. Here's what he wrote. The resurrection of the dead is the Christian's trust. By the resurrection, we are believers. The belief of this truth, the belief in the truth of the resurrection, compels us. That truth, this truth of the resurrection of the dead, which God reveals, the crowd, and when he says the crowd, he means pagans or heathens, unsaved. The truth in the resurrection which God reveals, the crowd derides, right? They don't buy it. And then he goes on, the crowd, these heathens, these unsaved people, suppose that nothing will survive after death. And yet, they do honor to their dead. And they do honor their dead in the most expensive way according to their bequest, and with the daintiest bouquets or banquets which the seasons can produce, on the presumption that those whom they declare to be incapable of all perception still retain an appetite. So basically he's saying those people, those heathens, even though they don't believe that anything happens after you're dead, they honor the dead by having meals in honor of the person who's dead. Even though that person cannot perceive it, they still kind of hope that they do. He goes on, but let the crowds deride, right? Let them think what they want to think. I, on my side, this is Tertullian saying this is his opinion. I, Tertullian, on my side, must deride it still more. I'm going to say that is wrong. And here's why. This is his explanation. Especially when it burns up its dead with harshest inhumanity, only to pamper them immediately afterwards with gluttonous satiety, using the self-same fires to honor them and insult them. So he says, hey, they can think bad about me all they want. This is what I think. I think that they're wrong because they burn their dead and then use those same fires to cook with. He goes on, right? What piety is it which mocks its victims with cruelty? Is it sacrifice or insult which the crowd offers when it burns its offerings to those that it has already burnt? So I want to point out that Tertullian speaks in the first person here. He is making the point that he personally disagrees with how non-believers dispose of the dead. He disagrees with them burning their dead. When he speaks of unquestioned truths within Christendom in his other writings, Tertullian uses terms like we or us instead of I, as in this case. So this is not a doctrine of the early church. It's his personal opinion. Speaking of which, should we always just accept the personal opinions or personal stances of Tertullian? I love Tertullian, but I don't think we should. Tertullian has a book, Exhortation to Chastity, where he makes the argument that sexually desiring your spouse is the same as adultery. You going to agree with that? I don't think so. Tertullian said that sex, even inside of marriage, disrupts a person's Christian walk with God. Do you believe that? I don't think so. Tertullian was very inconsistent in his application of Scripture. On one hand, he might say that the context of a certain passage of Scripture from the Bible is very literal. In another book, talking about a different topic, he's going to say that same passage was allegorical or metaphorical. All depends on what his opinion was regarding the topic that he's trying to convince you of. He taught that going to the theater was pagan, being entertained at the theater. He said that women should not wear jewelry. He said that women should remain veiled. He believed that if someone became a widow or a widower, that they should remain unmarried for the rest of their life. In fact, it was that teaching that the widow and the widower should remain single that got him in trouble with the rest of the leaders in the church during his day, that actually got him expelled for a while. So are you going to follow Tertullian's opinions on everything? You can't just cite him as your source of an argument and say, see, since he said it, we have to do it or have to believe it for something, and then reject his other teachings. I don't think that inconsistency really helps you win this argument, but good try. Hey, don't skip to the next video. You've only watched the anti-cremation arguments 12, 13, and 14 in this video. You've still got, there's 17 arguments altogether. So go to the end of this video. I've got a playlist that has them grouped together, about 3 or 4 in each video. Make sure that you watch the other ones. If you want to watch them one at a time, I've also got a playlist for that. Or if you just want to sit down and watch it all in one video, there's even a video for that. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. My name's Bob Balch with the That's Jesus channel. Have a great day and be blessed.